Cheers. Thank you.
All right, we're going to get back on track with the book. We'll give him a minute. Give him a minute to settle down. We're in the home stretch. Are you ready? Good.
Alexander J. Dowie.
Hello, Christians and anti-Bloomites. The man called Bloom is from the roots of hell. A disgrace to Christian men, a fiendish libertine from his earliest years. This stinking goat of Mendes gave precocious signs of infantile debauchery, recalling the cities of the plain with a dissolute grandam. This vile hypocrite, bronzed with infamy, is the white bull mentioned in the Apocalypse, a worshipper of the scarlet woman, intrigues the very breath of his nostrils. The stake faggots and the cauldron of boiling oil are for him. Caliban! The mob. Lynch him, roast him, he's as bad as Parnell was, Mr. Fox. Mother Grogan throws her boot at Bloom. Several shopkeepers from Upper and Lower Dorset Street throw objects of little or no commercial value, ham bones, condensed milk tins, unsaleable cabbage, stale bread, sheep's tails, odd pieces of fat. Bloom. Oh, this is Midsummer Madness, some ghastly joke again. By heaven, I am guiltless as the unsunned snow. It was my brother Henry, he is me double. He lives in number 2 Dolphin's Barn. Slander, the viper, has wrongfully accused me. Fellow countrymen, Sinigal Ban Bada Consaidagan Cabal. I call on my old friend, Dr. Malachi Mulligan, sex specialist, to give medical testimony on my behalf. Dr. Mulligan, in motor jerkin, green motor goggles on his brow. Dr. Bloom is bisexually abnormal. He has recently escaped from Dr. Eustace's private asylum for demented gentlemen. Born out of wedlock, hereditary epilepsy is present, the consequence of unbridled lust. Traces of elephantiasis have been discovered among his ascendants, and there are marked symptoms of chronic exhibitionism. Ambidexterity is also latent. He is prematurely bald from self-abuse, perversely idealistic in consequence, a reformed rake, and he has metal teeth. In consequence of a family complex, he has temporarily lost his memory, and I believe him to be more sinned against than sinning. Now, I have made a per-vaginal examination, and after application of the acid test to 5,427 anal, axillary, pectoral, and pubic hairs, I declare him to be Virgo intacta. Bloom holds his high-grade hat over his genital organs. Dr. Madden. Hypososadia is also marked. In the interest of coming generations, I suggest that the parts affected should be preserved in spirits of wine in the National Teratological Museum. Dr. Crothers. I have examined the patient's urine. It is albinoid, and salivation is insufficient, the patellar reflex intermittent. Dr. Punch Costello. The fetal Judaicus is most presentable. Dr. Dixon. He reads a bill of health. Professor Bloom is a finished example of the new womanly man. His moral nature is simple and lovable. And many have found him a dear man, a dear person. And he is a rather quaint fellow, on the whole, coy, though they're not feeble-minded in the medical sense. But he has written a really beautiful letter, a poem in itself to the court missionary of the Reformed Priests Protection Society, which clears up everything. He is practically a total abstainer, and I can affirm that he sleeps on a straw litter and eats the most Spartan food, cold, dry grocer's peas. And he wears a hair shirt of pure Irish manufacture, winter and summer, and scourges himself every Saturday. He was, I understand, at one time a first-class misdemeanant in Glencree Reformatory. And another report states that he was a very posthumous child. Now, I appeal for clemency in the name of the most sacred word our vocal organs have ever been called upon to speak. He is about to have a baby. General commotion and compassion. Women faint. A wealthy American makes a street collection for Bloom. Gold and silver, coins, blank checks, banknotes, jewels. All kinds of things. Oh, treasury bonds, maturing bills of exchange, IOUs, and wedding rings, watch chains, lockets, necklaces, and bracelets are rapidly collected. Bloom. Oh, I so want to be a mother.
From left upper entrance with 2 gliding steps, Henry Flower comes forward to left front center. He wears a dark mantle and drooping plume sombrero. He carries a silver-stringed inlaid dulcimer and a long-stemmed bamboo Jacob's pipe, its clay bowled, fashioned as a female head. He wears dark velvet hose and silver-buckled pumps. He has the romantic savior's face with flowing locks, thin beard, and mustache. His spindle legs and sparrow feet are those of the tenor Mario, Prince of Candia. He settles down his goffered ruffs and moistens his lips with a passage of his amorous tongue. Henry, in a low, dulcet voice, touching the strings of his guitar, "There is a flower that bloometh." Virag, truculent, his jowls set, stares at the lamp. Grave Bloom regards Zoe's neck. Henry, gallant, turns with pendant dewlap to the piano. Stephen, to himself, "Play with your eyes shut. Imitate Pa, filling my belly with husks of swine. Too much of this. I will arise and go to my... Expect this is the... Steve, thou art in a parlous way. Must visit old Deasy or telegraph. Our interview of this morning has left me in a deep impression. Through our ages. We'll write fully tomorrow. I'm partially drunk, by the way." He touches the keys again. "Minor chords come now." Yes, not much, however. Almidano Artifani holds out a baton roll of music with vigorous mustache work. "Ci rifletta, le rovina tutto." Florrie, "Sing us something. Love's old sweet song." Stephen, "No voice. I am a most finished artist." Lynch, "Did I show you the letter about the lute?" Florrie, smirking, "The bird that can sing and won't sing." The Siamese twins, Philip drunk and Philip sober, 2 Oxford dons with lawn mowers, appear in the window embrasure. Both are masked with Matthew Arnold's face.
Zoe twirls round herself, heel tapping. "Dance! Anybody here for there? Who'll dance? Clear the table." The pianola with changing lights plays in waltz time the prelude of "My Girl's a Yorkshire Girl." Stephen throws his ash plant on the table and seizes Zoe round the waist. Florrie and Bella push the table towards the fireplace. Stephen, arming Zoe with exaggerated grace, begins to waltz her round the room. Bloom stands aside. Her sleeve falling from gracing arms reveals a white flesh flower of vaccination. Between the curtains, Professor McGinney inserts a leg, on the toe point of which he spins a silk hat. With a deft kick, he sends it spinning to his crown, and jaunty-hatted skates in. He wears a slate frock coat with claret silk lapels, a gorget of cream tulle, a green low-cut waistcoat, stock collar with white kerchief, tight lavender trousers, patent pumps, and canary gloves. In his buttonhole is an immense dahlia. He twirls in reverse directions a clouded cane, then wedges it tight in his oxter. He places a hand lightly on his breastbone, bows, and fondles his flower and buttons. McGinney, the poetry of motion, art of calisthenics. No connection with Madame Leggett Burns or Levinston's. Fancy dress balls arranged. Deportment. The Catty Lerner step. So, watch me, my terpsichorean abilities. He minuets forward 3 paces on tripping bee's feet. Tout le monde en avant. Révérence. Tout le monde en place. The prelude ceases. Professor Godwin, beating vague arms, shrivels, sinks, his live cape falling about the stool. The air in firmer waltz time sounds. Stephen and Zoe circle freely. The lights change, glow, fade gold, rosy violet. The pianola. 2 young fellows were talking about their girls, 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 sweethearts they'd left behind. From a corner, the morning hours run out, gold-haired, slim-sandaled, in girlish blue, wasp-waisted with innocent hands. Nimbly they dance, twirling their skipping ropes. The hours of noon follow in amber gold. Laughing, linked, high hair combs flashing, they catch the sun in mocking mirrors, lifting their arms. McGinney clip-claps glove-silent hands. Carré, avant de, breathe evenly, balancez. The morning and noon hours waltz in their places, turning, advancing to each other, shaping their curves, bowing vis-à-vis. Cavaliers behind them arch and suspend their arms with hands descending to, touching, rising from their shoulders. Ours, you may touch my. Cavaliers, may I touch your? Ours, oh, but lightly. Cavaliers, oh, so lightly. The pianola, my little shy little lass has a waist. Zoe and Stephen turn boldly with looser swing. The twilight hours advance from long land shadows, dispersed, lagging, languid-eyed, their cheeks delicate with cypria and false faint bloom. They are in gray gauze with dark bat sleeves that flutter in the land breeze. McGinney, avant huit, traversez, salut, cours de main, croisez. The night hours, one by one, steal to the last place. Morning, noon, and twilight hours retreat before them. They are masked with daggered hair and bracelets of dull bells. Weary, they kerchie under veils. The bracelets, hey-ho, hey-ho. Zoe, twirling her hand to her brow. Oh! McGinney, les tiroirs, chaîne de dames, la courbée, dos à dos. Arabesquing wearily, they weave a pattern on the floor, weaving, unweaving, curtsying, twirling, simply swirling. Zoe, I'm giddy. She frees herself, droops on a chair. Stephen seizes Flory and turns with her. McGinney, boulangère, les ronds, les ponts, chevaux de bois, escargot. Twining, receding, with interchanging hands, the night hours link, each with arching arms and a mosaic of movements. Stephen and Flory turn cumbrously. McGinney, dansez avec vos dames, changez de dame, donnez le petit bouquet à votre dame, remerciez. Pianola, best of all, ba-da-bum. Kitty jumps up. Oh, they played that on the hobby horses at the Myris Bazaar. She runs to Stephen. He leaves Flory brusquely and seizes Kitty. A screaming bittern's harsh, high whistle shrieks. Groan, grouse, gurgling, Toft's cumbersome whirligig turns slowly the room, right round about the room. The pianola, my girl's a Yorkshire girl. Zoe, Yorkshire through and through. Come on, all! She seizes Flory and waltzes her. Stephen, pas seul! He wheels Kitty into Lynch's arms, snatches up his ash plant from the table, and takes the floor. All wheel, whirl, waltz, twirl, bloom, Bella, Kitty, Lynch, Flory, Zoe, jujube women. Stephen with hat ash plant, frog splits in middle high kicks, with sky kicking mouth, shut hand clasp part under thigh. With clang, tinkle, boom hammer, tally-ho, hornblower, blue, green, yellow flashes, tofts, cumbersome turns, with hobby horse riders from gilded snakes dangled, bowels, fandango, leaping, spurn, soil, foot, and fall again. The pianola, though she's a factory lass and wears no fancy clothes. Close-clutched, swifter with glare, blare, flare, scudding, they scoot, loot, shoot, lumbering by. But-a-bum. Tutti, encore, bis, bravo, encore. Simon, think of your mother's people. Stephen, dance of death. Bang, fresh barang bang of lackey's bell, horse, nag, steer, piglings, Conmy on Christ ass, lame crutch and leg sailor in cockboat, arm folded, rope pulling, hitching, stamp, hornpipe, through and through, bada-bum, on nags, hogs, bell, horses, Gadarene swine, corny in coffin, steel shark, stone, one-handled Nelson, two trickies, Frauenzimmer, plum-stained, from pram falling bawling, Gum, he's a champion. Fuse blue pier from barrel rev, evensong love on hackney jaunt blazes. Blind, cod-doubled bicyclers, dilly with snow cake. No fancy clothes. Then in last switchback, lumbering up and down, bump, mash tub, sort of viceroy and wren. Relish for tub lumper, bumper, rose, bada-bum.
The couples fall aside. Stephen whirls giddily. Room whirls back. Eyes closed, he totters. Red rails fly spacewards. Stars all around, suns turn roundabout. Bright midges dance on walls. He stops, dead. Stephen, ho! Stephen's mother, emaciated, rises stark through the floor. In leper gray, with a wreath of faded orange blossoms and a torn bridal veil. Her face worn and noseless, green with grave mold. Her hair is scant and lank. She fixes her blue-circled hollow eye sockets on Stephen and opens her toothless mouth, uttering a silent word. The choir of virgins and confessors sing voicelessly. Liliata rutialatiam te confessoram, jubilantiam te virginiam. From the back of the tower, Buck Mulligan, in party-colored jester's dress of puce and yellow and clown's cap with curling bell, stands gaping at her, a smoking buttered split scone in his hand. Buck Mulligan, she's basely dead. The pity of it, Mulligan meets the afflicted mother. He upturns his eyes, Mercurial Malachi, the mother, with the subtle smile of death's madness. I was once the beautiful May Goulding. I am dead. Stephen, horror-struck. Lemur, who are you? No, what boogeyman's trick is this? Buck Mulligan shakes his curling cap bell. The mockery of it. Kinch dog's buddies killed her bitch body. She kicked the bucket. Tears of molten butter fall from his eyes onto the scone. Ah, great sweet mother, epi onopa ponton. The mother comes nearer, breathing upon him softly her breath of wetted ashes. All must go through it, Stephen. More women than men in the world, you too. Time will come. Stephen, choking with fright, remorse, and horror. They say I killed you, Mother. He offended your memory. Cancer did it, not I. Destiny. The mother, a green rill of bile trickling from the side of her mouth. You sang that song to me, love's bitter mystery. Stephen, eagerly, tell me the word, mother, if you know now, the word known to all men. The mother, who saved you the night you jumped into the train at Dalkey with Paddy Lee? Who had pity for you when you were sad among the strangers? Prayer is all-powerful. Prayer for the suffering souls in the Ursuline Manual and 40 days indulgence. Repent, Stephen. Stephen, the ghoul. Hyena, the mother. I pray for you in my other world. Get Dilly to make you that boiled rice every night after your brain work. Years and years I loved you, oh my son, my firstborn, when you lay in my womb. Zoe, fanning herself with a grate fan. I'm melting. Florrie points to Stephen. Look, he's white. Bloom goes to the window to open it more. Kitty, the mother with smoldering eyes. Repent! The fires of hell! Stephen, panting, his non-corrosive sublimate. The corpse is sure. Raw head and bloody bones. The mother, her face drawing near and nearer, sending out an ashen breath. Beware! She raises her blackened, withered right arm slowly towards Stephen's breast with outstretched finger. Beware God's hand! A green crab with malignant red eyes sticks deep its grinning claws into Stephen's heart. Stephen, strangled with rage, his features grow drawn, gray, and old. Sight! Bloom, at the window. What? Stephen, non par exemple, the intellectual imagination with me, all or not at all, non serviam. Florrie, give him some cold water. Wait, she rushes out. The mother wrings her hands slowly, moaning desperately. Oh, Sacred Heart of Jesus, have mercy on him. Save him from hell. Oh, Divine Sacred Heart. Stephen, no, no, no. Break my spirit, all of you, if you can. I'll bring you all to heel. Mother, in the agony of her death rattle. Have mercy on Stephen, Lord, for my sake. Inexpressible was my anguish when expiring with love, grief, and agony on Mount Calvary. Stephen, no thing. He lifts his ash plant high with both hands and smashes the chandelier. Time's livid final flame leaps and, in the following darkness, ruin of all space, shattered glass, and toppling masonry.
We have many great sponsors for Bloomsday, and I thank them all for recognizing how important this event is for the Rosenbach and for people worldwide who love to read this book. But I especially want to thank a new sponsor this year, Sláinte Irish Whiskey, and I want to thank Liev Schreiber, who is one of the co-founders of the company, for making a video reading for us, which you all will watch right now. And you can visit Sláinte in the back for a free tasting. Sláinte, everyone.
Hi, I'm Liev Schreiber, and I'm reading a passage from Circe. Bloom. I was just going home by Gardner Street when I happened to Corny Kelleher. Sure, they wanted me to join in with the Motts. No, by God, says I, not for old stagers like myself and yourself. Thanks be to God we have in the house. What, hey, do you follow me? Ha, ha, ha! Bloom tries to laugh. Yes, matter of fact, I was just visiting an old friend of mine there. Virag, you don't know him, poor fella, he's laid up for the past week. And we had a liquor together, and I was just making my way home. The horse neighs. The horse. Corny Kelleher. Sure, it was Behan or Jarvey there that told me after we left the two commercials in Mrs. Cohn's, and I told him to pull up and get off to sea. Sober hearse driver is a specialty. Will I give him a lift home? Where does he hang out? Somewhere in Cabra, what? Bloom. No, in Sandy Cove, I believe, from what he let drop. Stephen, prone, breathes to the stars. Corny Kelleher, a squint, drawls at the horse. Bloom, in gloom, looms down. Corny Kelleher scratches his nape. Sandy Cove, he bends down and calls to Stephen. Eh? He calls again. Eh? He's covered with shavings anyhow. Take care they didn't lift anything off him. Bloom. No, I have his money in his hat here and his stick. Corny Kelleher. Ah, well, he'll get over it. No bones broken. Well, I'll shove along. I have a rendezvous in the morning, burying the dead. Safe home. The horse neighs. Home. Bloom. Good night. I'll just wait and take him along in a few. Corny Kelleher returns to the outside car and mounts it. The horse harness jingles. Corny Kelleher from the car, standing. Night. Bloom. Night. The Jarvey chucks the reins and raises his whip encouragingly. The car and horse back slowly, awkwardly, and turn. Corny Kelleher on the side seat sways his head to and fro in sign of mirth at Bloom's plight. The Jarvey joins in the mute pantomimic merriment, nodding from the farther seat. Bloom shakes his head in mute, mirthful reply. With thumb and palm, Corny Kelleher reassures that the two bobbies will allow the sleep to continue for what else is to be done. With a slow nod, Bloom conveys his gratitude as that is exactly what Stephen needs. The car jingles, tooraloom round the corner of the tooraloom lane. Corny Kelleher again reassuralooms with his hand. Bloom with his hand assuralooms Corny Kelleher that he is reassuraloom-tay. The tinkling hoofs and jingling harness grow fainter with their tooraloo-loo-loo-lay. Bloom, holding in his hand Stephen's hat, festooned with shavings and ash plant, stands irresolute. Then he bends to him and shakes him by the shoulder. Eh? Ho? There is no answer. He bends again. Mr. Daedalus? There is no answer. The name, if you call, somnambulist. He bends again, and, hesitating, brings his mouth near the face of the prostrate form. Stephen! There is no answer. He calls again. Stephen! Stephen frowns. Who? Black Panther? Vampire? He sighs and stretches himself, then murmurs thickly with prolonged vowels. Who? Drive Fergus now, and pierce wood's woven shade. He turns on his left side, sighing, doubling himself together. Bloom. Poetry. Well educated. Pity. He bends again and undoes the buttons of Stephen's waistcoat. To breathe. He brushes the wood shavings from Stephen's clothes with light hand and fingers. £1.7. Not hurt anyhow. He listens. What? Stephen murmurs. Shadows. The woods. White breast. Dim sea. He stretches out his arms, sighs again, and curls his body. Bloom, holding the hat and ash plant, stands erect. A dog barks in the distance. Bloom tightens and loosens his grip on the ash plant. He looks down on Stephen's face and form. Bloom communes with the night. Face reminds me of his poor mother, and the shady wood, the deep white breast. Ferguson, I think, I caught. A girl, some girl. Best thing could happen him, he murmurs. Swear that I will always hail, ever conceal, never reveal any part or parts, art or arts, he murmurs. In the rough sands of the sea, a cable tow's length from the shore where the tide ebbs and flows. Silent, thoughtful, alert, he stands on guard, his fingers at his lips in the attitude of secret master. Against the dark wall a figure appears slowly. A fairy boy of 11, a changeling, kidnapped, dressed in an Eton suit with glass shoes and a little bronze helmet, holding a book in his hand. He reads from right to left, inaudibly, smiling, kissing the page. Bloom, wonderstruck, calls inaudibly, "Rudy!" Rudy gazes unseeing into Bloom's eyes and goes on reading, kissing, smiling. He has a delicate mauve face. On his suit he has diamond and ruby buttons. In his free left hand he holds a slim ivory cane with a violet bow knot. A white lambkin peeps out of his waistcoat pocket.
Preparatory to anything else, Mr. Bloom brushed off the greater bulk of the shavings and handed Stephen the hat and ash plant and bucked him up generally in orthodox Samaritan fashion, which he very badly needed. His, Stephen's, mind was not exactly what you would call wandering, but a bit unsteady, and on his expressed desire for some beverage to drink, Mr. Bloom, in view of the hour it was, and there being no pump or Varty water available for their ablutions, let alone drinking purposes, hit upon an expedient by suggesting, off the reel, the propriety of the cabman's shelter, as it was called, hardly a stone's throw away, near Boot Bridge, where they might hit upon some drinkables in the shape of a milk and a soda or a mineral. But how to get there was the rub. For the nonce, he was rather nonplussed, but inasmuch as the duty plainly devolved upon him to take some measures on the subject, he pondered suitable ways and means, during which Stephen repeatedly yawned. So far as he could see, he was rather pale in the face, so that it occurred to him as highly advisable to get a conveyance of some description which would answer in their then condition, both of them being ED-ed, particularly Stephen, always assuming that there was such a thing to be found. Accordingly, after a few such preliminaries as brushing, in spite of his having forgotten to take up his rather soap-suddy handkerchief after it had done yeoman service in the shaving line, they both walked together along Beaver Street, or more properly Lane, as far as the farriers and the distinctly fetid atmosphere of the livery stables at the corner of Montgomery Street, where they made tracks to the left, from thence debouching into Amon Street, round by the corner of Dan Bergen's. But, as he confidently anticipated, there was not a sign of a Jehu plying for hire anywhere to be seen, except a four-wheeler, probably engaged by some fellows inside on the spree, outside the North Star Hotel, and there was no symptom of its budging a quarter of an inch when Mr. Bloom, who was anything but a professional whistler, endeavored to hail it by emitting a kind of whistle holding his arms arched over his head twice. This was a quandary, but bringing common sense to bear on it, evidently there was nothing for it but to put on a good face on the matter and foot it, which they accordingly did. So, beveling around by Mullet's and the Signal House, which they had shortly reached, they proceeded perforce in the direction of Amon Street Railway Terminus, Mr. Bloom being handicapped by the circumstance that one of his back buttons of his trousers had, to vary the time-honored adage, gone the way of all buttons. Though, entering thoroughly into the spirit of the thing, he heroically made light of the mischance. So, as neither of them were particularly pressed for time, as it happened, and the temperature refreshing since it cleared up after the recent visitation of Jupiter Pluvius, they dandered along, passed by where the empty vehicle was waiting without a fare or a jarvey. As it so happened, a Dublin United Tramways Company's sand strewer happened to be returning, and the elder man recounted to his companion, apropos of the incident, his own truly miraculous escape of some little while back. They passed the main entrance of the Great Northern Railway Station, the starting point for Belfast, where of course all traffic was suspended at that late hour, and passing the back door of the morgue, a not very enticing locality, not to say gruesome to a degree, more especially at night. Ultimately gained the Dock Tavern and in due course turned into Store Street, famous for its C Division police station. Between this point and the high, at present unlit warehouses of Beresford Place, Stephen thought to think of Ibsen, associated with Baird's The Stonecutters in his mind, somehow in Talbot Place, first turning on the right, while the other, who was acting as his fidus actus, inhaled with internal satisfaction the smell of James Rourke's City Bakery, situated quite close to where they were, the very palatable odor, indeed, of our daily bread, of all our commodities, of the public, the primary and most indispensable. Bread, the staff of life, earn your bread. Oh, tell me, where is fancy bread? At Rourke's the baker, it is said.
Mr. Bloom and Stephen entered the cabman's shelter, an unpretentious wooden structure where, prior to then, he had rarely, if ever, been before, the former having previously whispered to the latter a few hints anent the keeper of it said to be the once famous Skin the Goat, Fitzharris, the Invincible, though he would not vouch for the actual facts, which quite possibly there was not one vestige of truth in. A few moments later saw our two noctambules safely seated in a discreet corner, only to be greeted by stares from the decidedly miscellaneous collection of waifs and strays and other nondescript specimens of the genus Homo already there, engaged in eating and drinking, diversified by conversation, for whom they seemingly formed an object of marked curiosity. Accordingly, his first act was, with characteristic sang-froid, to order these commodities quietly. The hoi polloi of Jarvies or stevedores or whatever they were, after a cursory examination, turned their eyes, apparently dissatisfied, away, although one red-bearded, bibulous individual, portion of whose hair was grayish, a sailor probably, still stared for some appreciable time before transferring his rapt attention to the floor. Mr. Bloom availing himself of the right of free speech, he having just a bowing acquaintance with the language in dispute, though to be sure rather in a quandary over Volio, remarked to his protege in an audible tone of voice apropos of the battle royal in the street, which was still raging fast and furious. A beautiful language, I mean, for singing purposes. Why do you not write your poetry in that language? Bella poetry, it's so melodious and full. Belladonna, Volio. Stephen, who was trying his dead best to yawn if he could, suffering from lassitude generally, replied, to fill the ear of an elephant. They were haggling over money. Is that so, Mr. Bloom asked. Of course, he subjoined pensively at the inward reflection of there being more languages to start with than were absolutely necessary. It may be only the southern glamour that surrounds it. Well, the keeper of the shelter in the middle of this tete-a-tete put a boiling swimming cup of a choice concoction labeled coffee on the table and a rather antediluvian specimen of a bun, or so it seemed, after which he beat a retreat to his corner. Mr. Bloom, determining to have a good square look at him later on so as not to appear to, for which reason he encouraged Stephen to proceed with his eyes while he did the honors by surreptitiously pushing the cup of what was temporarily supposed to be called coffee gradually nearer him. Sounds are impostures, Stephen said after a pause of some little time, like names. Cicero, Podmore, Napoleon, Mr. Goodbody, Jesus, Mr. Doyle. Shakespeare's were as common as Murphy's. What's in a name? Yes, to be sure, Mr. Bloom unaffectedly concurred. Of course, our name was changed too, he added, pushing the so-called roll across.
The red-bearded sailor who had his weather eye on the newcomers boarded Stephen, whom he had singled out for attention in particular, squarely by asking,
"And what might your name be?"
Just in the nick of time, Mr. Bloom touched his companion's boot, but Stephen, apparently disregarding the warm pressure from an unexpected quarter, answered,
"Daedalus."
The sailor stared at him heavily from a pair of drowsy, baggy eyes, rather bunged up from excessive use of booze, preferably good old Hollands and water.
"You know Simon Daedalus?" he asked at length.
I've heard of him, Stephen said.
Mr. Bloom was all at sea for a moment, seeing the others evidently eavesdropping too. "He's Irish," the seaman bold affirmed, staring still in much the same way and nodding, "all Irish."
All too Irish, Stephen rejoined. As for Mr. Bloom, he could neither make head or tails of the whole business, and he was just asking himself what possible connection when the sailor, of his own accord, turned to the other occupants of the shelter with the remark,
"I seen him shoot 2 eggs off 2 bottles at 50 yards over his shoulder. The left hand dead shot. Though he was slightly hampered by an occasional stammer, and his gestures being also clumsy as it was, still he did his best to explain. Bottles out there, say 50 yards, measured. Eggs on the bottles. Cocks his gun over his shoulder, aims. He turns his body half round, shut up his right eye completely. Then he screwed his features up some way sideways and glanced out to the night with an unprepossessing cast of countenance. "Palm!" he then shouted once.
The entire audience waited, anticipating an additional detonation, there being still a further egg.
"Palm!" he shouted twice.
Egg 2, evidently demolished, he nodded and winked, adding bloodthirstily,
"Buffalo Bill shoots to kill. Never missed, nor he never will."
A silence ensued till Mr. Bloom, for agreeableness' sake, just felt like asking him whether it was for a marksmanship competition like the Bisley.
"Beg pardon," the sailor said.
Long ago, Mr. Bloom pursued without flinching a hair's breadth.
"Why," the sailor replied, relaxing to a certain extent under the magic influence of Diamond Cut Diamond, "it might be a matter of 10 years. He toured the wide world with Hengler's Royal Circus. I seen him do that in Stockholm."
Curious coincidence, Mr. Bloom confided to Stephen unobtrusively.
"Murphy's my name," the sailor continued. "D.B. Murphy of Carrigaloe. Know where that is?"
Queenstown Harbor, Stephen replied.
"That's right," the sailor said. "Fort Camden and Fort Carlisle. That's where I hails from. I belongs there. That's where I hails from. My little woman's down there. She's waiting for me, I know. For England, home, and beauty. She's my own true wife. Haven't seen her for 7 years now, sailing about."
On the roadway, which they were approaching while still speaking beyond the swing chains, a horse, dragging a sweeper, paced on the paven ground, brushing a long swath of mire, up so that, with the noise, Bloom was not perfectly certain whether he had caught aright the allusion to 65 guineas and John Bull. He inquired if it was John Bull, the political celebrity of that ilk, as it struck him, the two identical names, as a striking coincidence. By the chains, the horse slowly swerved to turn, which perceiving Bloom, who was keeping a sharp lookout as usual, plucked the other's sleeve gently, jocosely remarking, "Our lives are in peril tonight. Beware of the steamroller." They thereupon stopped. Bloom looked at the head of the horse, not worth anything like 65 guineas, suddenly in evidence in the dark, quite near, so that it seemed new, a different grouping of bones, and even flesh, because, palpably, it was a forewalker, a hip shaker, a black buttocker, a tail angler, a head hanger, putting his hind foot foremost, the while the lord of his creation sat on the perch, busy with his thoughts. But such a good poor brute, he was sorry he hadn't a lump of sugar, but as he wisely reflected, you could scarcely be prepared for every emergency that might crop up. He was just a big, nervous, foolish, noodly kind of a horse without a second care in the world. But even a dog, he reflected, take that mongrel in Barney Kearney's of the same size, would be a holy horror to face. But it was no animal's fault in particular if he was built that way, like a camel, ship of the desert, distilling grapes into poaching in his hump. 9/10 of them all could be caged or trained, nothing beyond the art of man, barring the bees. Whale with harpoon hairpin, alligator tickle the small of his back, and he seized the joke. Chalk a circle for a rooster, tiger, my eagle eye. These timely reflections anent the brutes of the field accompanied his mind somewhat distracted from Stephen's words, while the ship of the street was maneuvering and Stephen went on about the highly interesting old. What's this I was saying? Ah, yes, my wife, he intimated, plunging in medias res, would have the greatest of pleasure in making your acquaintance, as she is passionately attached to music of any kind. He looked sideways in a friendly fashion at the side face of Stephen, image of his mother, which was not quite the same as the usual handsome blackguard type they unquestionably had an insatiable hankering after, as he was perhaps not that way built.
The horse was just then. Later on, at the propitious opportunity, he purposed, Bloom did, without any way prying into his private affairs on the full step-in where angels principle, advising him to sever his connection with a certain budding practitioner who, he noticed, was prone to disparage even to a slight extent, with some hilarious pretext when not present, deprecate him, or whatever you like to call it, which in Bloom's humble opinion threw a nasty sidelight on that side of a person's character, no pun intended. The horse, having reached the end of his tether, so to speak, halted, and rearing high a proud feathering tail, added his quota by letting fall on the floor, which the brush would soon brush up and polish, 3 smoking globes of turds. Slowly, 3 times, one after another, from a full cropper he mired. And humanely his driver waited till he or she had ended, patient in his sided car. Side by side, Bloom, profiting by the contretemps, with Stephen passed through the gap of the chains, divided by the upright, and, stepping over a strand of mire, went across towards Gardiner Street lower, Stephen singing more boldly, but not loudly, the end of the ballad, Und alle Schiffe brücken. The driver never said a word, good, bad, or indifferent, but merely watched the two figures as he sat on his low-back car, both black, one full, one lean, walk toward the railway bridge to be married by Father Maher. As they walked, they at times stopped and walked again, continuing their tete-a-tete, which, of course, he was utterly out of, about sirens, enemies of man's reason, mingled with a number of other topics of the same category, usurpers, historical cases of the kind, while the man in the sweeper car, oh, you might as well call it in the sleeper car, who, in any case, couldn't possibly hear because they were too far, simply sat in his seat near the end of Lower Gardiner Street and looked after their low-backed car.
We are going to take a break for about 15 minutes, actually 20 minutes. But before we do that, I want to thank the sponsors. We couldn't do Bloomsday without you. The Consulate General of Ireland's Emigrant Support Program, Lenore, Steiner, and Perry Lerner, James Conmy, Alix, Gerz, and George Matysik, the South Jersey Celtic Society, and Sláinte Whiskey. Thank you, guys, Sláinte. Our community partners are still around the sides here. You can say hello to them. Attic Brewing is still in the back with their Sacred Pint Bloomsday special brew for us this year. You can buy some and take them home with you. We're going to take a little break. Darren Kelly and John McGillian. Enjoy.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Classics. We've added a new band member. We're called Rolling Stones.
The Rolling Stones.
Rolling Stones.
Do you get it?
Cheers. One more. All right. Like, yeah, like this. Yeah. All right, everyone. We've got two more readings for the day, and they are performances. This is what you come for. Michael Toner and Mal White are going to read. In 1992, a few Ulysses fanatics decided that the Rosenbach, the home of the most complete manuscript of Joyce's Ulysses, ought to be having a Bloomsday celebration. So a few brave souls organized a reading at a local bookstore. It was the old Borders bookstore that used to be on Chestnut Street. And those readers were Drusy McDaniel to read Molly Bloom. Chaim Potok, the novelist, was there to read Leopold Bloom. And Michael Toner was there to read too, making him one of our founding readers. Michael has since been involved in many Bloomsdays over the years of the Rosenbach, and several years ago, he asked his compatriot, Mal White, who was on stage for many productions at the Abbey Theatre in Dublin, and also has a small role in the film of Ulysses, Bloom, from 2003. You're the shusher in the library in that, aren't you? He asked Mao to join him in his adaptation of the Ithaca chapter, and they have been performing it for us on Bloomsday for years now. Please welcome Michael Toner and Mal White.
Look, that's me. What parallel courses did Bloom and Stephen follow returning?
Starting united both at normal walking pace from Beresford Place, they followed in the order named Lower and Middle Gardner Streets and Mountjoy Square West. Then, at reduced pace, each bearing left, Gardner's Place by an inadvertence as far as the farthest corner of Temple Street. Then, at reduced pace, with interruptions of halt, bearing right, Temple Street North, as far as Hardwick Place. Approaching, disparate, at relaxed walking pace, they cross both the circus before George's Church diametrically, the chord in any circle being less than the arc which it subtends.
Did Bloom discover common factors of similarity between their respective like and unlike reactions to experience?
Both were sensitive to artistic impressions, musical in preference to plastic or pictorial. Both preferred a continental to an insular manner of life, a cisatlantic to a transatlantic place of residence. Both indurated by early domestic training and an inherited tenacity of heterodox resistance, professed their disbelief in many orthodox religious, national, social, and ethical doctrines. Both admitted the alternately stimulating and obtunding influence of heterosexual magnetism.
Were their views on some points divergent?
Stephen dissented openly from Bloom's views on the importance of dietary and civic self-help, while Bloom dissented tacitly from Stephen's views on the eternal affirmation of the spirit of man in literature.
What act did Bloom make on their arrival at their destination?
At the house steps of the fourth of the different uneven numbers, number 7 Eccles Street, he inserted his hand mechanically into the back pocket of his trousers to obtain his latchkey.
Was it there?
It was in the corresponding pocket of the trousers which he had worn on the day but one preceding.
Why was he doubly irritated?
Because he had forgotten, and because he remembered that he reminded himself twice not to forget.
What were then the alternatives before the premeditatedly, respectively, and inadvertently keyless couple?
To enter or not to enter, to knock or not to knock.
Bloom's decision?
A stratagem. Resting his feet on the dwarf wall, he climbed over the area railings, compressed his hat on his head, grasped 2 points at the lower union of rails and stiles, lowered his body gradually by its length of 5 feet, 9 inches and a half, to within 2 feet, 10 inches of the area pavement, and allowed his body to move freely in space by separating himself from the railings and crouching in preparation for the impact of the fall.
Did he arise uninjured by concussion?
Regaining new stable equilibrium, he rose uninjured, though concussed by the fall. Raised the latch of the area door, gained retarded access to the kitchen through the subadjacent scullery, and lit a portable candle.
Did the man reappear elsewhere?
After a lapse of 4 minutes, the glimmer of his candle was discernible through the semi-transparent, semicircular glass fanlight over the hall door. The hall door turned gradually on its hinges. In the open space of the doorway, the man reappeared without his hat, with his candle.
Which seemed to the host to be the predominant qualities of his guest?
Confidence in himself, an equal and opposite power of abandonment and recuperation.
How did Bloom prepare a collation for a Gentile? He poured into 2 teacups 2 level spoonfuls for an hour of Epsis soluble cocoa and proceeded according to the directions for use printed on the label, to each adding after sufficient time for infusion the prescribed ingredients for diffusion in the manner and in the quantity prescribed. Was the guest conscious of, and did he acknowledge these marks of hospitality? His attention was directed to them by his host jocosely, and he accepted them seriously as they drank in joco-serious silence. Epsis mass product, the creature cocoa. What celebration accompanied Bloom's frequentative act? Concluding by inspection, but erroneously, that his silent companion was engaged in mental composition, he reflected on the pleasure derived from literature of instruction rather of amusement, as he himself had applied to the works of William Shakespeare more than once for the solution of difficult problems in imaginary or real life. Had he found their solution? In spite of careful and repeated readings of certain classical passages aided by a glossary, he had derived imperfect conviction from the texts, the answers not bearing on all points. What lines concluded his first piece of original verse written by him, potential poet, at the age of 11 in 1877, on the occasion of the offering of 3 prizes of 10 shillings, 5 shillings, and 2 shillings 6pence, respectively, for competition in The Shamrock, a weekly newspaper. An ambition to squint at me verses in print make me hope that for these you'll find room. If you so condescend, then please place at the end the name of yours truly, L. Bloom. What anagrams had he made on his name in youth? Leopold Bloom. El Padbomul. Molodopbloob. Balopidum. Old Olebo, MP. What acrostic upon the abbreviation of his first name had he, kinetic poet, sent to Miss Marion Molly Tweedy on the 14th February 1888? Poets oft have sung in rhyme of music sweet their praise divine. Let them hymn it 9 times 9. Dear far than song or wine, you are mine, the world is mine. How many previous encounters between host and guest prove their pre-existing acquaintance? 2. First in the lilac garden of Matthew Dillon's house, Medina Villa, Kimmage Road, Round Town, in 1887, in the company of Stephen's mother, Stephen being then of the age of 5 and reluctant to give his hand in salutation. The second in a coffee room of Breslin's Hotel, on a rainy Sunday in the January of 1892, in the company of Stephen's father and Stephen's grand-uncle, Stephen being then 5 years elder. Did Bloom accept the invitation to dinner, given then by the son and afterwards seconded by the father? Very gratefully, with grateful appreciation, with sincere, appreciative gratitude, in appreciatively grateful sincerity of regret, he declined. What, reduced to their simplest reciprocal form, were Bloom's thoughts about Stephen's thoughts about Bloom, and about Stephen's thoughts about Bloom's thoughts about Stephen? He thought that he was a Jew, whereas he knew that he was not. What? The enclosures of reticence removed were their respective parentages. Bloom, only born male transubstantial heir of Rudolf Vierag, subsequently Rudolf Bloom, of Szombathely, Vienna, Budapest, Milan, London, and Dublin, and of Ellen Higgins, second daughter of Julius Higgins, born Caroly, and Fanny Higgins, born Hegarty. Stephen, eldest surviving male consubstantial heir of Simon Dedalus of Cork and Dublin, and of Mary, daughter of Richard and Christina Goulding, born Greer. What two temperaments did they individually represent?
Scientific, the artistic. What suggested scene was then constructed by Stephen?
Solitary hotel in Mountain Pass. Autumn, twilight. Fire lit. In dark corner, young man seated. Young woman enters, restless. Solitary. She sits. She goes to window. She stands. She sits. Twilight. She thinks. On solitary hotel paper, she writes. She thinks, she writes, she sighs. Wheels and hoofs. She hurries out. He comes from his dark corner. He sees his solitary paper. He holds it towards fire. Twilight. He reads. Solitary.
What?
In sloping, upright, and backhands, Queen's Hotel, Queen's Hotel, Queen's Hotel, Queen's Hotel.
What suggested scene was then reconstructed by Bloom?
The Queen's Hotel, Ennis, County Clare, where Rudolph Bloom, Rudolph Virag, died on the evening of the 27th of June, 1886, at some hour unstated, in consequence of an overdose of monkshood, aconite, self-administered in the form of a neuralgic liniment composed of 2 parts aconite liniment to 1 of chloroform liniment, purchased by him at 10:20 a.m. on the morning of the 27th of June, 1886, at the Medical Hall of Francis Dennehy, 17 Church Street, Ennis, after having, though not in consequence of having, purchased at 3:15 on the afternoon of the 27th of June, 1886, a new Bota straw hat, extra smart, after having, though not in consequence of having, purchased at the hour and in the place aforesaid, the toxin aforesaid, at the general drapery store of James Cullen, 4 Main Street, Ennis.
Accepting the analogy implied in the guest's parable, which examples of post-exilic eminence did he adduce?
3 seekers of the pure truth. Moses of Egypt, Moses Maimonides, author of Moreh Nebuchim, Guide of the Perplexed, and Moses Mendelssohn, of such eminence that from Moses of Egypt to Moses Mendelssohn, there arose none like Moses Maimonides.
What fragments of verse from the ancient Hebrew and ancient Irish languages were cited with modulation of voice and translation of texts by guest to host, and by host to guest?
By Stephen?
Shul, shul, shularun, shul go sucker, agus shul go kun. Walk, walk, walk your way. Walk in safety, walk in care. By Bloom?
Kafilach, Harimon, Rakatech, Mibad, Lezamtech. Thy temple amid thy hair is as a slice of pomegranate.
What was Stephen's auditive sensation?
He heard in a profound, ancient, male, unfamiliar melody the accumulation of the past.
What was Bloom's visual sensation?
He saw, in a quick young male familiar form, the predestination of a future.
Did the host encourage his guests to chant in a modulated voice a strange legend on an allied theme?
Reassuringly, their place, where none could hear him talk, being secluded, reassured that the decocted beverages, allowing for subsolid residual sediment of a mechanical nature, water plus sugar plus cream plus cocoa, having been consumed.
Recite the first part major of this chanted legend.
Little Harry Hughes and his schoolfellas all went out for to play ball, and the very first ball little Harry Hughes played, he drove it o'er the Jew's garden wall. And the very second ball little Harry Hughes played, he broke the Jew's windows all. He broke the Jew's windows all.
How did the son of Rudolph receive this first part?
With unmixed feeling. Smiling, a Jew, he heard with pleasure and saw the unbroken kitchen window.
Recite the second part minor of the legend.
And out there came the Jew's daughter, she all dressed in green. Come back, ye pretty little boy, and play your ball again. And play your ball again. I can't come back, and I won't come back without me schoolfellas all. For if me master he did hear, he'd make it a sorry ball. He'd make it a sorry ball. She took him by the lily white hand, led him along the hall, until she led him to a room where none could hear him call. Where none could hear him call. She took a penknife out of her pocket and cut off his little head. And now he'll play his ball no more, for he lies among the dead. For he lies among the dead.
How did the father of Millicent receive this second part?
With mixed feelings. Unsmiling, he heard and saw with wonder a Jew's daughter, all dressed in green. What proposal did Bloom, diambulist, father of Molly, somnambulist, make to Stephen, noctambulist?
To pass in repose the hours between Thursday proper and Friday normal on an extemporized cubicle in the apartment immediately above the kitchen and immediately adjacent to the sleeping apartment of the host and hostess.
Was the proposal of asylum accepted?
Promptly, inexplicably, with amicability, gratefully, it was declined.
Why would a recurrent frustration the more depress him?
Because at the critical turning point of human existence, he desired to amend many social conditions, the product of inequality and avarice and international animosity.
Why did he desist from speculation?
Because it was a task for a superior intelligence to substitute other more acceptable phenomena in the place of the less acceptable phenomena to be removed.
Did Stephen participate in his dejection?
He affirmed his existence as a conscious, rational animal proceeding syllogistically from the known to the unknown, and a conscious, rational reagent between a micro and a macrocosm ineluctably constructed upon the incertitude of the void.
Was this affirmation apprehended by Bloom?
Not verbally. Not verbally, substantially.
But what comforted his misapprehension?
That as a competent Keeler citizen, he had proceeded energetically from the unknown to the known through the incertitude of the void.
What did each do at the door of egress?
Bloom set the candlestick on the floor. Stephen put his hat on his head.
What spectacle confronted them when they, first the host, then the guest, emerged silently, doubly dark, from obscurity by a passage from the rear of the house into the penumbra of the garden?
The heaven tree of stars hung with humid night blue fruit. His, Bloom's, logical conclusion, having weighed the matter and allowing for possible error,
that it was not a heaven tree, not a heaven grot, not a heaven beast, not a heaven man, that it was a utopia, there being no known method from the known to the unknown, an infinity renderable equally finite by the superstitious apposition of one or more bodies equally of the same and of different magnitudes. A mobility of illusory forms, immobilized in space, remobilized in air. A past which possibly had ceased to exist as a present before its probable spectators had entered actual present existence.
Was he more convinced of the aesthetic value of the spectacle?
Indubitably, in consequence of the reiterated examples of poets in the delirium of the frenzy of attachment, or in the abasement of rejection, invoking ardent sympathetic constellations, or the frigidity of the satellites of their planet. What visible, luminous sign attracted Bloom's, who attracted Stephen's gaze?
In a second story rear of his, Bloom's house, the light of a paraffin oil lamp with oblique shade projected on a screen of roller blind supplied by Frank O'Hara, window blind curtain pole and revolving shutter manufacturer, 16 Angel Street.
How did he elucidate the mystery of an invisible, attractive person, his wife Marion, Molly Bloom, denoted by a visible, splendid sign, a lamp?
With indirect and direct verbal allusions and affirmations, with subdued affection and admiration, with description, with impediment, with suggestion.
Both were then silent.
Silent, each contemplating the other in both mirrors of the reciprocal flesh of their his, not his fellow faces.
Were they indefinitely inactive?
At Bloom's suggestion, at Stephen's suggestion, at Bloom's instigation, both, first Stephen, then Bloom, in penumbra urinated, their sides contiguous, their organs of micturition reciprocally rendered invisible by manual circumposition, their gazes, first Bloom's, then Stephen's, elevated to the projected luminous and semi-luminous shadow.
Similarly,
the trajectories of their first sequent, then simultaneous urinations were dissimilar. Bloom's longer, less irruent, in the incomplete form of the bifurcated penultimate alphabetical letter, who, in his ultimate year in high school, 1880, had been capable of attaining the point of greatest altitude against the whole concurrent strength of the institution, 210 scholars. Stephen's higher, more sibilant, who in the ultimate hours of the previous day had augmented by diuretic consumption and insistent vesical pressure.
What different problems presented themselves to each concerning the invisible, audible, collateral organ of the other? To Bloom,
the problems of irritability, tumescence, rigidity, reactivity, dimension, sanitariness, pilosity. To Stephen,
the problems of the sacerdotal integrity of Jesus circumcised. 1st of January, holiday of obligation to hear Mass and abstain from unnecessary servile work. And the problem as to whether the divine prepuce, the carnal bridal ring of the Holy Roman Apostolic Church, conserved in Calcutta, were deserving of simple hypoduly, or of the 4th degree of latria accorded to the abscission of such divine excrescences as hair and toenails.
What celestial sign was by both simultaneously absorbed?
A star precipitated with apparent velocity across the firmament, from Vega in the Lyre above the zenith beyond the star group of the Threats of Berenice towards the zodiacal sign of Leo.
I take. There we go.
Where are we?
How did they take their lead?
I can't find it. Show me.
How did they take their leave?
Ah, yeah. That's you.
That's right, it is me.
Give me the hat.
You're the one who can. How did they take their leave, one of the other, in separation?
Standing perpendicular at the same door and on different sides of its base, the lines of their valedictory arms meeting at any point and forming any angle less than the sum of two right angles.
What sound accompanied the union of their tangent, the disunion of their, respectively, centrifugal and centripetal hands?
The sound of the peal of the hour of the night by the chime of the bells in the church of St. George.
What echoes of that sound were by both and each heard?
By Stephen.
Liliata rutilantium, turma circumdet, jubilantium te virginum, chorus excipiat. By Bloom.
Hey ho, hey ho, hey ho.
Alone, what did Bloom feel?
The cold of interstellar space, thousands of degrees below freezing point of the absolute zero of Fahrenheit, centigrade, or Reaumur. The incipient intimations of proximate dawn.
Of what did bell chime and hand touch and footstep and lone chill remind him?
Of companions now in various manners in different places defunct. Percy ap John, killed in action, Mother River. Philip Gilligan, Thusis, Jervis Street Hospital. Matthew F. Kane, accidental drowning, Dublin Bay. Philip Waddell, Poemia, Heytesbury Street. Michael Hart, Thusis, Mater Misericordiae Hospital. Patrick Dignam, apoplexy, Sandymount.
Did he remain?
With deep inspiration, he returned, retraversing the garden, re-entering the passage, reclosing the door. With brief suspiration, he reassumed the candle, reascended the stairs, reapproached the door of the front room, hall floor, and entered.
What suddenly arrested his ingress?
The right temporal lobe of the hollow sphere of his cranium came into contact with a solid timber angle, where, an infinitesimal but sensible fraction of a second later, a painful sensation was located in consequence of antecedent sensations transmitted and registered.
What composite asymmetrical image in the mirror then attracted his attention?
The image of a solitary ipso-relative, mutable alio-relative man.
Why solitary ipso-relative?
Brothers and sisters had he known that that man's father was his grandfather's son.
Why mutable alio-relative?
From infancy to maturity, he had resembled his maternal procreatrix. From maturity to senility, he would increasingly resemble his paternal procreator.
What were habitually his final meditations?
Of some one sole unique advertisement to cause passers to stop in wonder, a poster novelty, with all extraneous accretions excluded, reduced to its simplest and most efficient terms, not exceeding the span of casual vision and congruous with the velocity of modern life.
What possibly suggested itself?
Well, the possibility of exercising virile power of fascination in the not immediate future. After an expensive repast in a private apartment in the company of an elegant courtesan of corporal beauty, moderately mercenary, variously instructed, a lady by origin.
Why did Bloom experience a sentiment of remorse?
Because in immature impatience, he had treated with disrespect certain beliefs and practices.
As?
The prohibition of the use of flesh meat and milk at one meal. The hebdomadary symposium of incoordinately abstract, fervidly concrete, mercantile, co-ex-religionist ex-compatriots. The circumcision of male infants, the supernatural character of Judaic scripture, the ineffability of the tetragrammaton. the sanctity of the Sabbath.
How do these beliefs and practices now appear to him?
Not more rational than they had then appeared, not less rational than other beliefs and practices now appeared.
What universal binomial denominations would be his as entity and non-entity?
Assumed by any or known to none, every man or no man.
What tributes his?
Honor and gifts of strangers, the friends of every man. A nymph immortal, beauty, the bride of no man. What past consecutive causes, before rising pre-apprehended, of accumulated fatigue did Bloom, before rising, silently recapitulate?
The preparation of breakfast,
burnt offering,
intestinal congestion, and premeditative defecation.
Holy of Holies,
the bath,
rite of John,
the funeral,
rite of Samuel,
the advertisement of Alexander Keys,
Urim and Thummim,
the unsubstantial lunch,
rite of Melchizedek,
the visit to museum and library,
holy place,
the book hunt along Bedford Row, Merchants Arch, Wellington Quay,
Simchath Torah,
the music in the Ormond Hotel,
Shira Shirim,
the altercation with a truculent troglodyte in Bernard Kiernan's presences,
Holocaust,
a blank period of time, including a car drive, a visit to a house of mourning, a leave-taking,
wilderness,
the eroticism produced by feminine exhibitionism,
rite of Onan,
the prolonged delivery of Mrs. Mina Purefoy,
heave offering,
the visit to the disorderly house of Mrs. Bella Cohen, 82 Charon Street Lower, and subsequent brawl, and chance meeting in Beaver Street.
Armageddon!
Nocturnal perambulation to and from the cabman's shelter, Butt Bridge.
Atonement.
What self-evident enigma pondered with desultory constancy during 30 years did Bloom now, having affected natural obscurity by the extinction of artificial light, silently, suddenly comprehend?
Where was Moses when the candle went out?
Bloom's acts.
He deposited articles of clothing on a chair, removed his remaining articles of clothing, took from beneath the bolster at the head of the bed a folded long white nightshirt, inserted his head and arms into the proper apertures of the nightshirt, removed a pillow from the head to the foot of the bed, prepared the bed linen accordingly, and entered the bed.
How?
With circumspection, as invariably when entering an abode, his own or not his own. With solicitude, the snake spiral springs of the mattress being old, the brass quoits and pendant viper radii loose and tremulous under stress and strain. Prudently, as entering a lair or ambush of lust or adders. Lightly, the less to disturb. Reverently, the bed of conception and of birth, of consummation of marriage and breach of marriage, of sleep and of death.
With what antagonistic sentiments were his subsequent reflections affected?
Envy, jealousy, abnegation, equanimity.
Why more abnegation than jealousy, less envy than equanimity?
From outrage matrimony to outrage adultery, there arose naught but outrage copulation. Yet the matrimonial violator of the matrimonially violated had not been outraged by the adulterous violator of the adulterously violated.
In what final satisfaction did these antagonistic sentiments and reflections, reduced to their simplest forms, converge?
Satisfaction at the ubiquity in eastern and western terrestrial hemispheres, in all habitable lands and islands, explored or unexplored, the land of the midnight sun, the islands of the blessed, the isles of Greece, the land of promise, of adipose anterior and posterior female hemispheres, redolent of milk and honey, and of excretory sanguine and seminal warmth, reminiscent of secular families of curves of amplitude, insusceptible of moods of impression, expressive of mute, immutable, mature animality.
The visible signs of anti-satisfaction.
An approximate erection, a solicitous aversion, a gradual elevation, a tentative revelation, a silent contemplation.
Then
he kissed the plump, mellow, yellow, smellow melons of her rump on each plump, melanous hemisphere, in their mellow, yellow furrow, with obscure, prolonged, provocative, melanous osculation.
the visible signs of post-satisfaction.
Oh, a silent contemplation, a tentative revelation, a gradual abasement, a solicitous aversion, a proximate erection.
What followed this silent action?
Somnolent invocation, less somnolent recognition, incipient excitation, catechetical interrogation.
Which event or person emerged as the salient point of his narration?
Stephen Dedalus, professor and author. What moves visibly above the listeners and the narrator's invisible thoughts?
The upcast reflection of a lamp and shade, an inconstant series of concentric circles of varying gradations of light and shadow.
In what direction did listener and narrator lie?
Listener, southeast by east, narrator, northwest by west, on the 53rd parallel of latitude north and 6th meridian of longitude west at an angle of 45 degrees to the terrestrial equator.
In what state of rest or motion?
At rest relatively to themselves and to each other, in motion being each and both carried westward, forward, and rearward respectively by the proper perpetual motion of the earth through ever-changing tracts of never-changing space.
In what posture?
Listener, reclined semi-laterally left hand under head, right leg extended in a straight line and resting on the left leg, flexed in the attitude of Gaetellus, fulfilled, recumbent, big with seed. Narrator, reclining laterally left with right and left legs flexed, the index finger and thumb of the right hand resting on the bridge of the nose in the attitude depicted in a snapshot photograph made by Percy Apjohn, the child-man weary, the man-child in the womb.
Womb? Weary?
He rests. He has traveled.
With?
Sinbad the sailor
and Timbad the tailor and
Jinbad the jailer and
Winbad the whaler and
Ninbad the nailer and
Finbad the failer and
Binbad the baler and
Pinbad the paler and
Minbad the mailer and
Hinbad the hailer and Rinbad the railer and Dinbad the caler and Finbad the quailer and Limbad the yaler and Zimbad the failer. When?
Going to dark bed, there was a square round Sinbad the sailor's ox egg. In the night of the bed, of all the ox, of the rocks, of darkened bad, the bright dailer.
Where?
Michael Toner and Mal White. Let me take one moment to thank all the singers that we had here today and the pianist. The pianist was Ting Ting Wong. The singers were Megan McGinty, Zachary Angus, and Corey Don. Megan will be back at the end to sing one more song. I want to thank my Bloomsday assistant who helped me with corralling the readers, Eileen Cuniff. Thank you, Eileen. I want to thank our on-site Ulysses advisor, Ted Howe, who advised readers and helped them with their passages. And I want to thank... Did it go out? Are we good? How about now? Good. And I want to thank especially all of our readers who took the time to learn these passages and come and do this great delivery today. Thank you all. And I want to thank Darren Kelly and John McGillian who are going to play here. 7:10. Kirsten Quinn is going to do Molly Bloom. 7:10. See you in a few minutes.
Okay. Thank you. Three-part hornpipe, the high level. G tune. Second is D, G, A.
Good evening, everyone. It's time. It's time for our finale. Everyone settle in. My name is Kelsey Bates. I'm the director of the Rosenbach. Thank you for moving inside with us today. I think it was a good idea. Before we get to our finale, I want to thank a few people. First of all, I want to thank our sponsors. First of all, I've been waiting all day to thank Attic Brewing, and finally, I was going to wait till 7, but I actually started thanking them at 6:30. So, Attic Brewing, thank you so much for this fantastic beer with our great new logo on the front. I want to thank Sláinte Irish Whiskey. Sláinte, thank you. And thank you for bringing Liev Schreiber to read today. Thank you to the Consulate General of Ireland's Emigrant Support Program, to Lenny Steiner and Perry Lerner, to Jim Conmy, Alix Gerz, and George Matysik, and the South Jersey Celtic Society. Let's give them all a round of applause. I want to thank our staff. I can't stress enough how much work they put into this program. Yep, thanks. They plan for 2 possibilities, an outdoor program and an indoor program, and they plan them both to be the best possible program they can be. I want to call out a few people in particular. The project manager for Bloomsday is Chelsea Sands. Let's give her a huge round of applause. And her co-chairs were Amy Osterhout, Ed Pettit, and Isabel Stephen. Let's give them a round of applause. I want to thank the Rosenbach Board of Directors, who are extraordinarily supportive of the Rosenbach, very engaged and very interested in making sure that Bloomsday is free for all, is the best event of the year, and brings Ulysses to the most people that it possibly can. Out of all of those board of directors, I got to call out one person. Her name is Steiner. Yeah, okay. We can clap for her as much as we want. I call her our North Star for Bloomsday. She is the person who guides us, who gives us encouragement, who helps us choose the readings, and she is just a wonderful board member and friend to the Rosenbach, and we're so happy to have her as part of our community, so. There she is. I'm going to take the spear away right now. We're very pleased to bring you a new Molly Bloom reader this year, Kristen Quinn. Kristen Quinn is a professional actor and a professor at the Community College of Philadelphia. She has an MFA in acting from the University of Pittsburgh. She's performed at various theaters throughout Philadelphia and the surrounding areas, including the Wilma, the Lantern, Interact Theater, Theater in the X, the Philadelphia Artists Collective, Egpo Classic Theater, the IRC, ISIS Productions, Montgomery Theater, and many others. She is a co-founder and producer for the Irish Heritage Theater and has done many Irish plays with the company, including Molly Sweeney, for which she won the Philadelphia Critics Award for Best Actress. She's a Lindback Distinguished Teaching Award nominee and a Telly Award-winning educational TV host. We are so happy to have Kristen Quinn read the Molly Bloom chapter of Joyce's Ulysses this year. Please welcome Kristen Quinn.
He never did a thing like that before, is asked to get his breakfast in bed with a couple of eggs. Since the City Arms Hotel, when he used to be pretending to be laid up with a sick voice, doing his highness to make himself interesting for that old faggot, Mrs. Reardon, that he thought he had a great leg of. And she never gave us a farthing. All for masses, for herself and her soul. Greatest miser ever. Was actually afraid to lay out 4D for her methylated spirit, telling me all her ailments. She had too much old chat in her about politics and earthquakes and the end of the world. Let us have a bit of fun first. God help the world, and all the women were her sort. Down on bathing suits and low necks. Of course, nobody wanted her to wear them. I suppose she was pious, because no man would look at her twice. I hope I'll never be like her. I hate having a long wrangle in bed. Or else if it's not that, it's some little bitch or other he got in with somewhere or picked up on the sly. If they only knew him as well as I do. Yes. Because the day before yesterday, he was scribbling something. A letter when I came into the front room to show him Dingham's death in the paper, as if something told me. And he covered it up with the blotting paper, pretending to be thinking about business. So very probably that was it. Just somebody who thinks she has a softy in him, because all men get a bit like that at his age, especially getting on 40 like he is now. So as to wheedle any money she can out of him. No fool like an old fool. Yes. Because he couldn't possibly do without it that long, so he must do it somewhere. And the last time he came on my bottom, when was it? The night Bylan gave my hand a great squeeze going along by the Talca. In my hand there steals another. Oh, I just pressed the back of his like that with my thumb to squeeze back, singing, "The young May moon, she's beaming love." Why can't you kiss a man without going and marrying him first? You sometimes love too wildly when you feel that way. So nice all over you, you can't help yourself. Oh, I wish some man or other would take me sometime when he's there and kiss me in his arms. There's nothing like a kiss, long and hot, down to your soul, almost paralyzes you. Then I hate that confession. When I used to go to Father Corrigan. He touched me, Father. And what harm if he did? Where? And I said, on the canal bank, like a fool. But whereabouts on your person, my child? On the leg behind. High up, was it? Yes, rather high up. Was it where you sit down? Yes. Oh, Lord, couldn't he just say bottom and right out and have done with it? What has that got to do with it? And did you, whatever way he put it, I forget. No, Father. And I always think of the real Father. What did he want to know for when I already confessed it to God? He had a nice fat hand, the palm moist always. I wouldn't mind feeling it. Neither would he, I'd say, by the bull neck in his horse collar. I wonder, did he know me? In the box. I could see his face. He couldn't see mine, of course. He never turned or let on. Still, his eyes were red when his father died. They're lost for a woman, of course. Must be terrible when a man cries, let alone them. I'd like to be embraced by one in his vestments. Oh, and the smell of incense off him like the Pope. Oh. Besides, there's no danger with a priest if you're married. He's too careful about himself. Then give something to HH to the Pope for a penance. I wonder, was he satisfied with me? One thing I didn't like was him slapping me behind, going away so familiarly in the hall. Though I laughed. I'm not a horse or an ass, am I? I suppose he was thinking of his father. I wonder, is he awake thinking of me or dreaming? Am I in it? Who gave him that flower he said he bought? He smelled of some kind of drink. No, not whiskey or stout, or perhaps the sweetie kind of paste they stick their bills up with. Some liqueur. I'd like to sip those rich-looking green and yellow expensive drinks, those stage-door Johnny's drink with the opera hats. I tasted one with my finger, dipped out of the American that had the squirrel tucking stamps with Father. He had all he could do to keep himself from falling asleep after. And the last time after, we took the port and potted meat. It had a fine salty taste. Yes. Because I felt lovely and tired myself and fell asleep as sound as a top the moment I popped straight into bed till that thunder woke me up. God be merciful to us. I thought the heavens were coming down about to punish us when I blessed myself and said the Hail Mary, like those awful thunderbolts in Gibraltar, as if the world was coming to an end. And then they come and tell you that there's no God. Wait, there's George's church bells. Oh, wait, 3/4 of an hour. Wait, 2 o'clock. Well, that's a nice hour of the night for him to be coming home at to anybody. Climbing down into the area. If anybody saw him, I'll knock him off that little habit tomorrow. First, I'll look at his shirt to see. Or I'll see if he has that French letter still in his pocketbook. I suppose he thinks I don't know deceitful men. All their 20 pockets aren't enough for their lies. Then why would we tell them? Well, even if it's the truth, they don't believe you. Then, tucked up in bed like those babies in the aristocrat's masterpiece he brought me another time, as if we hadn't enough of that in real life without some old aristocrat or whatever his name is disgusting you more at those rotten pictures. Children with 2 heads and no legs. And yet that's the kind of villainy they're always dreaming about, with not another thing in their empty heads. They ought to get slow poison, the half of them. Then, tea and toast for him, buttered on both sides and no laid eggs. I suppose I'm nothing anymore. When I wouldn't lick him, let him lick me in Hollis Street one night. Man, tyrant as ever. For the one thing, he slept on the floor half the night. Like naked, the way the Jews used to when somebody dies belonged to them. And wouldn't eat any breakfast or speak a word, wanting to be petted. So I thought I stood out enough for one time and let him. He does it all wrong, too. Thinking only of his own pleasure. His tongue is too flat, or I don't know what. He forgets that we... Then I don't. I'll make him do it again if he doesn't mind himself. Lock him down to sleep in the coal cellar with the black beetles. I wonder, was it her, Josie, off her head? That barmaid, he does. Of course, his wife is always sick or going to be sick or getting the better of it, and has a good-looking man still. Oh, he's getting a bit grey over the ears. They're a nice lot, all of them. Well, they're not going to get my husband again into their clutches if I can help him. Making fun of him, then, behind his back. Now, I know well when he goes on with his idiotic... Because he has sense enough not to squander every penny piece he earns down their gullets and looks after his wife and family. Good for nothings. Poor Paddy Dingham, all the same. I'm sorry, in a way, for him. Now, what are his wife and 5 children going to do unless he was insured? A comical little teetotum, always stuck up in some pub corner, and her and her son waiting. Bill Bailey, won't you please come home? What was the good in going into mourning for what was neither one thing nor the other? Yeah, the first cry was enough for me. I heard the death watch, too, ticking in the wall. Of course, he insisted on going into mourning for the cat. I suppose he's a man by this time now. He was an innocent boy then, and a darling little fellow in his Lord Fauntleroy suit and curly hair, like a prince on the stage when I saw him at Matt Dillon's. He liked me too. I remember they all do. Wait. By God, yes, wait, hold on. He was on the cards this morning when I laid out the deck. Union with a young stranger, neither dark nor fair you met before. Well, I thought it meant him, but he's no chicken nor a stranger either. Besides, my face was turned the other way. And what was the 7th card after that? The 10 of spades for a journey by land. And then there was a letter on its way, and scandals too. The 3 queens and the 8 of diamonds for a rise in society. Yes, wait, it all came out. And 2 red 8s for new garments. Look at that. And didn't I dream something too? Yes. There was something about poetry in it. Huh. I hope he hasn't long, greasy hair hanging into his eyes, or standing up like a red Indian. What do they go about like that for? Only getting themselves and their poetry laughed at. I always liked poetry when I was a girl. First, I thought he was a poet, like Lord Byron, and not an ounce of it in his composition. I thought he was quite different. I wonder, is he too young? He's about, 88. I was married 88. Millie is 15 yesterday, 89. What age was he then at Dillon's? 5 or 6, about 88. I suppose he's 20 or more. Well, I'm not too old for him if he's 23 or 24. Hope he's not some stuck-up university student sort. No, otherwise he wouldn't go sitting down in the old kitchen with him and talking, taking Epsis cocoa and talking. Of course, he pretended to understand it all. Probably told him he was out at Trinity College. Well, he's very young to be a professor. Oh, I hope he's not a professor like Goodwin was. He's a patent professor, a John Jameson. They all write about some woman in their poetry. Well, I suppose he won't find many like me. Where softly sighs the love, the light guitar, where poetry is in the air, the blue sea and the moon shining so beautifully, coming back on the night boat from Tarifa, the lighthouse at Europa Point. The guitar that fella played was so expressive. Will I ever go back there again? All new faces, 2 glancing eyes, a lattice hit. I'll sing that for him. They're my eyes, if he's anything of a poet. 2 eyes as darkly bright as love's own star. Aren't those beautiful words? As love's own star. It'll be a change, the Lord knows, to have an intelligent person to talk to about yourself. Not always listen to him and Billy Prescott's ad and Keyes' ad and Tom the Devil's ad. Then, if anything goes wrong in their business, we have to suffer. I'm sure he's very distinguished. Oh, I'd like to meet a man like that. God, not those other ruck. Yeah, besides, he's young. Those fine young men I could see down in Margate Strand bathing place from the side of the rock, standing up in the sun naked like a god or something, and then plunging into the sea with them. Why aren't all men like that? Well, that'd be some consolation for a woman, wouldn't it? Like that lovely little statue he bought. I could look at him all day long. Curly head and his shoulders, his finger up for you to listen. There's real beauty and poetry for you. I often felt I wanted to kiss him all over. Also, his lovely young cock there, so simple. I wouldn't mind taking him in my mouth if nobody was looking. As if it was asking you to suck it. So clean and white he looks with his boyish face. No, I would too in half a minute, even if some of it went down. What? Something like roller do. There's no danger. And besides, he'd be so clean compared with those pigs of men I suppose never dream of washing it from one year's end to the other, the most of them. Honey, that's what gives the women the mustaches. I'm sure it'll be grand if I can only get in with a handsome young poet at my age. I'll throw them the first thing in the morning to see if the wish card comes out. Or I'll try pairing the lady herself and see if he comes out. I'll read and study all I can find or learn a bit off by heart, if I know who he likes. So you won't think that I'm stupid. If he thinks all women are the same and I can teach him the other part, I'll make him feel all over him till he half faints under me. Then he'll write about me. Lover and mistress, publicly too. With our 2 photographs in all the papers when he becomes famous. Oh, but what am I going to do with him, though? No, that's no way for him. He has no manners, nor no refinement, nor no nothing in his nature. Slapping us behind like that on the bottom because I can't call him Hugh. Ignoramus that doesn't know poetry from a cabbage. Well, that's what you get for not keeping them in their proper place. Pulling off his shoes and trousers there on the chair before me, so barefaced without even asking permission, and standing out that vulgar way in the half of a shirt they wear to be admired like a priest or a butcher or old hypocrites in the time of Julius Caesar. Of course, he's right enough in his way to pass the time as a joke. Sure, you might as well be in bed with what? With a lion. God, I'm sure he'd have something better to say for himself, an old lion would. Oh well. I suppose it's because they were so plump and tempting in my short petticoat he couldn't resist. They excite myself sometimes. It's well for men. All the amount of pleasure they get off a woman's body. We're so round and white for them always. I wish I was one myself for a change. Hey, just to try with that thing they have swelling up on you so hard and at the same time so soft when you touch it. My Uncle John has a thing long. I heard those corner boys saying, passing the corner of Marlborough Lane. My Aunt Mary has a thing hairy. Because it was dark. And they knew a girl was passing. Didn't make me blush. Why should it either? It's only nature. And he puts this thing long into my Aunt Mary's Harry, etc. Turns out to be, you put the handle in a sweeping brush. Men again, all over. They can pick and choose what they please, a married woman or a fast widow or a girl for their different tastes. Like those houses round about Irish Street. No, no, but we're to be always chained up. Well, they're not going to be chaining me up. No damn fear. Once I start, I tell you, for their stupid husband's jealousy. Why can't we all remain friends over it instead of quarreling? Her husband found it out, what they did together. Well, naturally. And if he did, can he undo it? Well, he's Coronado anyway, whatever he does. And then he's going to the other mad extreme about the wife in Fair Tyrants. Of course, the man never even casts a second thought on the husband or wife either. It's the woman he wants, and he gets her. What else were we all given desires for, I'd like to know? Well, I can't help if I'm young. Still, can I? It's a wonder I'm not an old shriveled hag before my time living with him. So cold. Never embracing me except sometimes when he's asleep. The wrong end of me. Not knowing, I suppose, who he has. Any man that kiss a woman's bottom, I'd throw my hat at him. After that, he'd kiss anything unnatural where we haven't one atom of any kind of expression in us. All of us the same. 2 lumps of lard before ever I'd do that to a man. Dirty brutes. Oh, the mere thought is enough. I kiss the feet of your senorita. There's some sense in that. Didn't he kiss our hall door? Yes, he did. What a madman. Nobody understands his cracked ideas but me. Still, Of course, a woman wants to be embraced 20 times a day, almost to make her look young, no matter by who, so long as to be in love or loved by somebody if the fellow you want isn't there. Sometimes, by the Lord God, I was thinking, would I go around by the quays there some dark evening where nobody'd know me and pick up a sailor off the sea that'd be hot on for it and not care a pin whose I was, only to do it off up in a gate somewhere? Or one of those wild-looking gypsies in Rathfarnham had their camp pitched near the Bloomfield laundry to try and steal our things if they could. I only sent mine there a few times for the name. Model laundry, sending me back over and over some old ones, old odd stockings. That blackguard-looking fella with the fine eyes, peeling at a switch, attack me in the dark and ride me up against the wall without a word, or a murderer. Anybody. What they do themselves, the fine gentlemen in their silk hats. That KC lives up somewhere this way, coming out of Hardwick Lane the night he gave us the fish supper on account of the winning over the boxing match. Of course, it was for me he gave it. I knew him by his gaiters and the walk. And when I turned around a minute after, just to see, there was a woman coming out of it too. Some filthy prostitute. Then he goes home to his wife after that. Only I suppose the half of those sailors are rotten again with disease. Move over your big carcass out of that for the love of Mike. Listen to him. The winds that waft my sighs to thee. So well he may sleep and sigh, the great suggester Don Poldo de la Flora. If he knew how he came out on the cards this morning, he'd have something to sigh for. A dark man in some perplexity between 272, in prison for Lord knows what he does. That I don't know. And I'm to be slouching around down in the kitchen to get his lordship his breakfast while he's rolled up like a mummy. Will I indeed? Did you ever see me running? I'd just like to see myself at it. You know, show them attention and they treat you like dirt. I don't care what anybody says. It'd be a much better for the world to be governed by the women in it. You wouldn't see women going and killing one another and slaughtering. When do you ever see women rolling around drunk like they do, or gambling every penny they have and losing it on horses? Yes, because a woman, whatever she does, she knows where to stop. Sure, they wouldn't be in the world at all for only for us. They don't know what it is to be a woman and a mother. How could they? Where would they all of them be if they hadn't all a mother to look after them? What I never had. That's why I suppose he's running wild now, out at night away from his books and studies and not living at home on account of the usual rowy house, I suppose. Well, it's a poor case that those that have a fine son like that, they're not satisfied, and I, none. Was he not able to make one? Well, it wasn't my fault. We came together when I was watching the two dogs up in her behind in the middle of the naked street. That disheartened me altogether. I suppose I oughtn't have buried him in that little woolly jacket I knitted, crying as I was, but give it to some poor child. But I knew well I'd never have another. Our first death, too, it was. We were never the same since. I'm not going to think myself into the glooms about that anymore. I wonder why he wouldn't stay the night. I felt all the time it was somebody strange he brought in instead of roving around the city, meeting God knows who, nightwalkers and pickpockets. And his poor mother wouldn't like that if she was alive, ruining himself her life, perhaps. Still, it's a lovely hour. So silent. I used to love coming home after dances. The air of the night. They have friends they can talk to. We've none either. He wants what he won't get. Or it's some woman ready to stick her knife in you. I hate that in women. No wonder they treat us the way they do. We are a dreadful lot of bitches. I suppose it's all the troubles we have makes us so snappy. I love flowers. Oh, I'd love to have the whole place swimming in roses. God, in heaven, there's nothing like nature. The wild mountains, then the sea and the waves rushing, then the beautiful country with the fields of oats and wheat and all kinds of things, and all the fine cattle going about that would do your heart good to see. Rivers and lakes and flowers, all sorts of shapes and smells and colors springing up, even out of the ditches. Primroses and violets. Nature it is. And as for them saying there's no God, I wouldn't give a snap of my 2 fingers for all their learning. Why don't they go and create something? I often asked him. Atheists, or whatever they call themselves, go and wash the cobbles off themselves first. And then they go howling for the priest and they die. And why? Why? Because they're afraid of hell. On account of their bad conscience. Oh, yes. I know them well. Who was the first person in the universe before there was anybody that made it all? Who? Huh? That they don't know. Neither do I. So there you are. They might as well try to stop the sun from rising tomorrow. The sun shines for you, he said, the day we were lying among the rhododendrons on Hoth Head and the grey tweed suit and the straw hat, the day I got him to propose to me. Yes. First, I gave him a bit of seed cake out of my mouth. And it was a leap year like now. Yes. 16 years ago. My God, after that long kiss, I near lost my breath. Yes. He said I was a flower of the mountain. Yes, so we are all flowers, all a woman's body. Yes. That was the one true thing he said in his life. And the sun shines for you today. Yes. Oh, that was why I liked him. Because I saw he understood or felt what a woman is. And I knew I could always get around him. And I gave him all the pleasure I could, leading him on till he asked me to say yes. And I wouldn't answer first. I only looked out over the sea and the sky. I was thinking of so many things that he didn't know of. Mulvey and Mr. Stanhope and Hester and Father and old Captain Groves and the sailors playing All Birds Fly. And I say stoop and washing up dishes, they called it on the pier, and the sentry in front of the governor's house with that thing round his white helmet, poor devil half roasted. And the Spanish girls laughing in their shawls, their tall combs, and the auctions in the morning, The Greeks and the Jews and the Arabs and the devil knows who else from all ends of Europe, and Duke Street and the Fowl Market, all clucking outside Laurie Sharon's, and the poor donkeys slipping half asleep, and the vague fellows in the cloaks asleep in the shade on the steps, and the big wheels of the carts of the bulls, and the old castle thousands of years old. Yes. And those handsome Moors all in white and turbans like kings asking you to sit down in their little bit of a shop, and Rhonda with the old windows of the posadas, two glancing eyes, a lattice hid for her lover to kiss the iron, and the wine shops half open at night, and the castanets, and the night we missed the boat at Algeciras, and the watchman going about serene with his lamp, and oh, that awful deep down torrent. Oh, and the sea, crimson sometimes like fire, and the glorious sunsets, and the fig trees in the Alameda Gardens, yes, and all the queer little streets, and the pink and blue and yellow houses, and the rose gardens, and the jessamine, and the geraniums, and cactuses, and Gibraltar as a girl where I was a flower of the mountain. Yes, when I put the rose in my hair like the Andalusian girls used, or shall I wear it red? Yes. And how he kissed me under the Moorish wall, and I thought, well, as well him as another. And then I asked him with my eyes to ask again. Yes. And then he asked me, would I say yes, to say yes, my mountain flower. And first I put my arms around him, yes, and drew him down to me so he could feel my breath all perfume, yes. And his heart was going like mad, and yes, I said, yes, I will.
Kirsten Quinn, everyone. And now one final song for the day.
Out
Happy Bloomsday, everyone. Good night. Thank you.